This is Waves, a podcast from APTA Michigan. I'm Andy Wicks with Dr. Catherine Klein. Physical therapists and physical therapist assistants are used to working with patients with a myriad of diagnoses. But what happens when we, the clinicians, become the patients? What is it like being on the other side of that relationship? We spoke with Eric Galvez, a former physical therapist and brain cancer survivor, or in his words, a brain cancer thriver, to learn about his experiences on both sides of the equation and what it taught him.
My name's Eric Galvez. I graduated from physical therapy school at the University of Michigan, Flint in 2003. Actually, after I graduated, I moved from Michigan to San Diego. So yeah, I just had enough of the cold, so I went somewhere warm. Yeah, I actually worked in outpatient physical therapy and inpatient, for about a year and a half. And that's when I was diagnosed with a golf ball sized meningioma brain tumor, which was between the brainstem and the cerebellum. So not really a really good area for a brain tumor.
Oh, how old were you when that was diagnosed?
I was 30 at the time.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I was, like I said, about a year and a half out of physical therapy school. I actually had surgery and rehab where I used to work. So a lot of my coworkers were my medical team. So that was kind of weird at first, but quite honest, at the time, nobody really knew about, at least I didn't know a lot about brain tumors. And the only thing you heard about a brain tumor was when somebody famous got one and died. So I was like, what's going to happen to me? But yeah, it was just a very strange time. And then I honestly felt comfortable being where I knew what was going on. So I actually had all my treatment and my surgery at the hospital where I used to work. So I got the best care.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you feel like it ultimately benefited you that you knew your care team on a more personal level?
Personal level? I think it might have. Again, I was just going to say that, it was just very intimidating and scary. So just being around people that I knew in the environment that I was familiar with, was definitely an advantage, and then I kind of knew all the protocols and I knew where everything was, in terms of rehab. It wasn't like I was starting from scratch. So, and I knew which therapists to work with and who to stay away from. So, but I definitely felt safe.
Well, that's good. So you went through that ordeal, and trust me, we'll come back and talk about that a little bit more. And I'm reading the bio that you also put up then you ran a nonprofit organization for about 14 years, sounds like, and we can talk a little bit more about that. And then I really want to talk about you being a Star Wars fan, because this is something that you and I will bond very much on, and Catherine can just kind of sit there and smile.
I'm a Star Wars fan, just probably not on the level that you are, Andy, or maybe you are too, Eric, but we'll see. But I'm familiar.
We can educate you.
I'm in the world. I know things. I have a Rey Lego in my kitchen right now, so.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Respect to the Rey Lego. Okay, cool. So Eric, I guess I want to ask a question. When I heard especially that you went through the rehab at your place of employment, you had definitely seen things. And also, I forgot to mention, you've written a couple books. So we're also talking with a published author.
You've done it. Sure. Well, Andy, you're the only one who hasn't published a book here. So what are you doing with your life?
I mean, what am I doing with my life? Holy cow. I wanted to ask about the perspective that you experienced then from both sides as the physical therapist and the patient, and having been the physical therapist first and then the patient, did it give you, I guess, talk about that experience if you could, in terms of the revelations it gave you on both sides of what it was really, really like.
Yeah, it was just a very strange time because my parents are Filipino. I mean, they're somewhat familiar with the rehab process, but I personally found myself explaining a lot to them, in terms that they could understand. So I kind of felt like I was the bridge between the therapists and the families. I guess I was kind of like a social worker at the time.
For yourself, though.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think as physical therapists, we do serve that role a lot. Being that bridge between maybe the physician and the family, or we often are some kind of conduit but not when we're also
Yeah.
the patient. That's a whole different twist to it.
Yeah, that just put a whole different spin on my recovery because, like, I had to know what was going on, and I had to explain what was going on to my parents. So it was just very, very, very strange. Like, because they would ask me questions that I had no idea
Mhm.
about. So, like, I would just relay it, to the therapist or to the doctors or whatnot. But yeah, I was just put in a very weird position.
Did it feel almost like it was happening to somebody else? Because I could imagine that being like you're almost drawing yourself out of the center of the experience when you're kind of putting yourself as the go-between between the providers and your family.
Well, that's the thing. Like, when I first got my diagnosis, I was talking to my doctor. He's like, "You got a golf ball sized brain tumor in your head." It's just doing the physical therapist, very analytical, process everything. And then when I hung up the phone and started thinking about it, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we're not talking about a patient. We're talking
Yeah.
about me."
Yeah.
And this is probably the scariest thing
Yeah.
that I've ever gone through. So
Oh, I can only imagine.
it's a lot to
Yeah.
process. It did take a while to just let it soak in. I had
Yeah.
to take that
Yeah.
physical therapy hat.
It's interesting what you just said. This isn't a patient, it's me. And I can only imagine every patient probably has that moment that they go through. It's not happening to someone else anymore. It's happening
Oh,
to me. And all the things that that changes. The class that I'm teaching right now with our students, it's called Teaching for Physical Therapists, which sounds a little bit weird, but really it's talking about how to be an effective communicator to all different kinds of parties. So that might, it's everything from talking to your patients and making sure that you're speaking not to say that you're speaking in a language they can understand, but in terms of speaking in terms they can understand, because health literacy is very different with
oh yeah.
different patient populations. And so you can't use the same medicalese approach for someone who just doesn't have that understanding, but also trying to emphasize to our students about all of the external psychological and emotional aspects of that patient therapist interaction, and recognizing that what you were just talking about, Eric, of that revelation of this is happening to me. And if you, as the therapist, don't really deal with that or acknowledge that, you've kind of lost the patient a little bit.
That's the thing. Like, as therapists, as PTs, we have a lot of physical contact with our patients. Doctors are see patients for maybe what, 20, 30 minutes, if that.
If
You
that,
know,
yep.
there's a lot of patient healthcare provider interaction. So those classes, they're very important
Yeah.
because the interaction is extremely, extremely important for the patient.
Can you remember for you as a patient, were there any interactions that you had with providers on your team that you feel like helped you be able to kind of process what was going on at a deeper level?
I think for me, like, when the therapist actually took into consideration what I like to do, that was extremely important because most of the oncology patients that you see are older. But I remember I was trying aquatic therapy, and my OT at the time let me bring in my surfboard into the therapy pool.
Oh,
So I used
that's
to
awesome.
practice paddling with my surfboard in the pool. You
That
know,
is so cool.
yeah, it's actually kind of fun because, like, beforehand, like, I had just moved to San Diego from Michigan, and, like, surfing and triathlons, those were the big things that I was really into.
Yeah.
When they brought that board in, I was like, "Man, this is kinda cool. I've never heard of anyone doing anything like that." So
Students, we call that saliency.
exactly, you know? But, I mean, I really enjoyed that. Like, I think as therapists, we can definitely make that personal connection with our patients, and that was extremely important to me because 'cause I'd been in the hospital for, gosh, probably about 4 weeks, I think, and
Mhm.
that's when we started doing that.
And when you
Is
were there, I think it said on your website, like you were a single guy living out there kind of on your own when all this hits you. Did you have a good social support network out there, or were you just kind of flying solo through all this?
it was funny that I was 30 at the time when I was diagnosed, my first real job after physical therapy school, and what did I do? I called my parents back in Michigan. I was like, "Mom, they
Yeah.
found something in my head. I think there's something wrong, something going on here."
Yeah.
So my dad luckily had just retired at the time, and he spent the time before surgery out. It was about a month before I had the actual surgery, but he
Okay.
was actually able to come out and stay with me. while I was waiting for everything. But my friends in San Diego were extremely important because they were there for me when they were visiting me in rehab and visiting me before the surgery. It's actually a funny story. One of my friends actually smuggled me in a pizza, because like
Yep,
hospital
not
food is
good.
notoriously horrible. I think it was like Papa John's, and that was like the first time I really enjoyed a meal in the hospital. So
We're laughing, but, like, it was truly important because 'cause we're still talking about it today. This was a long
I,
time ago that this
I,
happened, and it obviously meant a lot, and that's
yeah,
hilarious. It's just like smuggling in a shiv
Yeah.
into prison or something like that. No, it was a Papa John's pizza.
I love pizza. So
You could do a Papa John's commercial,
Oh
be
my
their new
goodness.
spokesperson.
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
You get free
Yeah.
Papa John's for life if you wanted it. You talked about on your little RSVP form that your areas of expertise were oncology rehab and nonprofit management. We we seem to be interviewing a lot of folks who either work in oncology rehab or have some other experience with it. So, welcome to the club. When you were a physical therapist, were you working in oncology rehab as well, or is this really more from a patient perspective?
more from a patient perspective. When I was working as a PT, I was in outpatient ortho,
Mhm.
and of course, before that, I was in acute care for I think 3 or 4 months
Okay.
before opening opened up in the outpatient clinic. So
Okay.
I was definitely down the sports medicine route. But then after I got diagnosed, I definitely have more interest in oncology
Yeah.
rehab. So for obvious reasons,
You know, the oncology therapists that we've talked to are some pretty rad people, I have to say.
yeah,
They're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
a group.
So, what led you to write those books? Let's talk about those. You have two books: Reversal, When a Therapist Becomes a Patient, and then Awakening, Becoming a Brain Tumor Thriver. I love that term, by the way.
That,
So, tell us about those books.
well, it's funny. The first book, Reversal, it's got kind of like the title has a double meaning.
Mhm.
Well, I was a state champion wrestler in Michigan way back in the 90s. So the reversal is where like your opponent initially has control of you, but you turn the tables and you take control of your patient. So
Okay.
kind of has a hidden meaning there.
I like that.
Yeah. So like the first book is just about getting the diagnosis and then having the surgery and just the first year after surgery, what were my expectations and what I actually was able to do.
Mhm.
So like that kind of just encompasses like everything that I was going through in that book. But the cool thing about the book is that I've got perspectives from. Don't ask me how I did this, but I got my mom, my dad, my brother, a couple of my buddies, and my therapists who are also my friends to add chapters to the book to kind of put their perspective on having a loved one go
Oh,
through.
interesting.
Yeah. And the coolest thing that I'm most proud of about the book is that each chapter is a popular song. I've got chapter titles Green Day, I think Marvin Gaye. I think at the time Kanye
Nice.
West was cool. You look at the actual content, they're all popular songs and they all correspond to the theme of the chapter. So
Nice.
just just a way to have fun.
Nice.
So that was the first book, Reversal. The second book is Awakening, and it's about all the stuff that I did after my diagnosis. I started a cancer nonprofit in San Diego, California. Of course, I wrote the books. So, just a bunch of different things that I was able to do after I was diagnosed and after all my treatment and whatnot. So, again, we've got different chapter titles that are songs in this also. So, I like to say this I've got like a book soundtrack. So,
Okay.
like,
I like it.
I think it was on iTunes. I honestly haven't checked it out in a while, but yeah, again, it just the songs have kind of correspond with the different themes of each chapter. So, like, I've got like a lot of popular songs on there. So, I think you can look it up on the blog. I don't remember them off the top of my head. Honestly,
That's all right.
it's been a while since I've actually looked at that stuff. So, but I'm always moving
Yeah.
forward.
I like that.
I do see the soundtracks
And we'll
here.
put links to on all this on the show notes. The books are available for purchase on the interwebs. Go ahead and get yourself a copy. I think I'm going to order myself one. Can we talk about the nonprofit then?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I actually started a cancer nonprofit in San Diego, California. And we used to take cancer survivors to different parts of the world to promote a proactive life after cancer. We've
Okay.
been to the Philippines, Japan, Belgium, going to Canada, gone all over the
I
place.
mean, that's a pretty
Yeah.
impressive list already, so
Yeah, South Africa was definitely one of the coolest places I've been
dang,
to. Yeah.
that's pretty rad.
I just take 3 of their, cancer survivors with me, and we would, speak at healthcare professional schools and programs and just promote a proactive life after cancer. We've also gone to a couple of patient groups, support groups, and
Okay.
spoken. It's just really cool promoting, the proactive life after cancer. The name of the nonprofit was called Mass Kickers, but we de-emphasized the M, so we're ass kickers. No, yeah, just adding a little bit more attitude to cancer
Yeah.
survivorship.
I
So,
like it. I like it.
but unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, we had to shut it down. So I dissolved it, I think in 2020. So,
Yeah.
because we
Bad time
couldn't
for travel.
more. So, yeah. But I've got a new nonprofit going on in my head, and I'm gonna probably incorporate it here in Michigan. It's called the Disability Gorillas. Gorillas spelled GUERRILLA, like the
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
military
Mhm.
was. So, no, I figure we're attacking disabilities with exercise, and this is
I
right
love
off
it.
our wheelhouse with
I love it.
physical therapy, just getting people more active.
Well,
So,
and that's one thing that in a lot of the oncology specialists we've talked to have talked about how because cancer is becoming because the survival rates are becoming better, higher and higher and higher,
yeah,
that folks now the we have to think now instead of it being this terminal diagnosis to more of like this long-term, maybe chronic condition, if you want to think of it that way. And then how do you promote this wellness and this activity, which is exactly what it sounds like your nonprofits were kind of focusing on. And I think that's fantastic. Not only, I mean, wellness and activity in any sphere of physical therapy is important, but I think it was Chris Wilson that we talked to, Dr. Chris Wilson, who was talking about the research showing that aerobic exercise makes for a better recovery. It's simply it's pure science on that regard, and it's just I think we can all attest to. Yeah, we tend to feel better when we exercise. So that's great that we're looking at that patient population instead of seeing it as this frail. Oh, you survived. Let's just kind of coddle you. Let's like, all right, let's go out and kick your butt a little bit there. I think it's fantastic.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting because like I've been talking to a lot of personal trainers also, and like they don't see a lot of cancer patients or people with disabilities in general. So like I think the more physically active people are, the more it's gonna help. Like
Yeah.
I think there's just so many more benefits of exercise and physical activity that we really need to start pushing that.
It seems like you live a very active lifestyle. And can you speak
Yeah.
to like what has helped you with that on like a personal level?
Well, before I was diagnosed and before I was going through everything, I was very physically active, like with the triathlons and all that other stuff. I've been trying to find my niche like now, with all the disabilities. I've tried personal training. I'm actually starting Brazilian
Cool.
jiu-jitsu, but I'm starting
Nice.
to realize that I'm too old for it because like I actually got hurt. Totally unrelated to disability. It's just my flexibility isn't really very, like,
Sucks to get old, doesn't it, Eric?
yep. But I'm definitely trying some different things. I've even tried yoga, but actually, funny story about yoga. I'll say it. Like
But
when I was doing yoga, like I got this mental image of Yoda from Star Wars telling me what to do. Like, couldn't stop laughing. Like when my friend kept telling me to like focus and like breathe in and breathe out. And then I just got this.
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm pretty immature, but I was
I
just
think
something I couldn't stop
I'm
laughing
kind
the
of
whole
surprised
time.
there aren't more yoga, Yoda like puns circulating in the
yeah,
world, to be honest with
yeah.
you.
I bet Yoda was pretty
Mhm.
good at yoga.
I bet so too.
I mean, if anyone kind of embodied that whole just kind of peace and
Yeah,
inner calm, it was Yoda.
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say, I think that the force is probably based on like Eastern medicine and beliefs. Anyways,
Totally,
I think I read
totally.
that somewhere. So
Yeah.
you got me excited.
Well, I was just gonna ask, so Eric, you're not a practicing physical therapist any longer, but how are you involved in the physical therapy world these days?
Yeah, like, well, ever since the COVID pandemic, I started to get involved with the APCA oncology.
Yep.
Like, I'm actually on the Balance and Falls special interest group and
Nice.
just learned about the Academy of Leadership and Innovation.
Yep.
They've got a catalyst group over there that's focusing on disability. So, like,
Well,
I'm
they have, yes, there's,
or-
I know, I don't know if it's through the ALI, but there's a disability and justice disability. Is that the one you were talking about? Is that the same
like,
one?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I popped in on a meeting for them in San Diego at CSM.
Oh,
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting movement going on. I think it's great that you are keeping your presence there, and I think, again, I think you have such a unique perspective to offer that I'm just glad you're there because I think your voice definitely needs to be heard and your story needs to be heard.
I
That
mean, that's the thing, Andy. Like, I actually go to physical therapy programs. Like, when I lived in San Diego, one of my former coworkers is a professor at SCSU, their
Okay.
PT program. I used to go over there to lecture and then be, I guess, like a lab
Mhm.
patient,
Yep,
I
like a
guess.
standardized patient. Yep.
So, yeah, so they can practice their techniques on real neuro patients. So,
Mhm.
instead of just practicing on each other, because, like, I remember as students, you try to like mimic the movements and whatnot of somebody with a disability.
It's hard.
You don't really do it very accurately. So,
Yeah.
like, figure why not go help someone out?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Find this.
fantastic. If you ever wanna make your way over to Grand Rapids, I can put you to work.
Okay. All right.
I see the M in the background there, so I know where your loyalties lie, but I'm just saying, if you ever wanna make your way to the west side of the state,
Yeah.
we got some good
I
students there
might take
too.
you up on that. We'll see.
Well, so I had a question about your book, Awakening, because I was kind of reading through the description and you were talking about how having a brain tumor you ended up pushing yourself out of your comfort zone more than you did prior to your diagnosis.
Oh, yeah.
I guess, what do you feel like sparked you to be a little bit more adventurous or more challenge yourself more?
That's the thing. Like, based on the location and the size of the tumor, like, I should not be as highly functioning as I am right now. And I'm like, I should be dead, honestly. But I'm like, I'm not dead, so I'm here, so I'm gonna do something good. It's just like I feel very blessed to be able to do everything that I do. So I really just want to make sure that everybody feels that same way. And like I said, the tumor was between the brainstem and the cerebellum. So that's like one of the worst areas to have a tumor. And after surgery, I could have died, could have had some very serious impairments. Luckily, I had a very good surgeon and I don't. I figure I'm alive, I'm here. So I'm going to make the most of it.
You just reminded me of a funny story, Eric. I used to work some coverage weekends at Mary Free Bed Rehabilitation Hospital in Grand Rapids. And I was working with a gentleman, he's probably in his 50s, who was there for a tumor resection. And you could tell he was just kind of this joker personality, just a funny guy, very jovial. And he was there, like his son was there, who's about my age, and they were kind of he was recovering from surgery and doing pretty well, but obviously he had a lot of mobility impairments. And the patient calls me over and he's like, "Hey, can I show you a picture?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So he pulls out his phone and he shows me the MRI results on his phone. And he had, I think he described it as a baseball sized tumor. Probably wasn't quite that big, but it was big
So very big.
and it was like right below his cerebellum. And he showed me the picture and I was like, wow. He's like, yeah, I kept telling the doctors I had a damn headache and they never believed me. Finally, they pulled it out. He's like, I feel a lot better now. But yeah, an impressive hole in his head from
Yeah.
that one.
And like I have a nice big scar on my head. I like to tell people it was from a bar fight or something, but
Did I believe you?
not really. Yeah, I'm not gonna get invites. So
But you were a state champion wrestler, Eric. Like this is,
eh,
you could say, hey,
Just because
you
you're a
know,
wrestler doesn't mean
you
that
should
you
see the other
fight
guy.
in real life.
No, but he could handle himself in a
True.
scrap. Is what I'm saying.
I would assume that.
I had a patient that I tried to get to. He had a leg amputation, and I kept trying to get him to tell the story about how he got the amputation. He had a traumatic brain injury, so he could never remember the story properly, and so he always got it wrong, but in a pretty funny way. We worked it up. The story was that he was on a safari in Africa and he was taking pictures and a hippopotamus attacked the boat and bit off his leg. And then we were gonna get it, like, believe it or not, you can order fake hippopotamus teeth off of Amazon. I mean, you can get anything. So I was like, but I was gonna get him a tooth to, like, but I got him, like, pull out the then and he kept getting it wrong, he kept getting it wrong, and the last person he told it to before he passed away was one of my students, and he finally got it right, and, like, watching her eyes just get wild, like, she was like, "Re really?" And then I'm, like, behind her, and I'm trying so hard not to laugh, but I was also so proud. I'm like, "You got it right. You told the story right for the first time. It was amazing." So you gotta make up a cool story, like, we're
Oh,
saving
and
a box of kittens from a burning car or something like that.
somewhere where I become a hero or something,
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to think
Because
about.
if it's just strange enough, they might be like, "Oh, wow, that's just wild enough that they're not gonna question you." You can't make it too outlandish, like,
Yeah.
fighting off an alien invasion or something like that, but it's like, "Oh, wow, he saved a box of kittens from a burning car. That's amazing." Eric, on this podcast, we are very pro soapbox,
Okay.
okay? If you have a soapbox that you wanna climb upon and shout to the world, now's your chance. If there's
Well,
anything that bugs you or just gets you going,
I really think that people with disabilities need to be out there more. The thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people with disabilities kind of stay in their shell. They don't really go anywhere and do anything. And that's something that I really want to change. Like there are a handful of people that do something great, but I want to make I want to make people understand that, a disability is not like the end of the world. There's a lot that you can still do. And like just in terms of getting more physically active, I think that that is going to help a lot. One of the reasons why I'm starting the new nonprofit, the Disability Gorillas. We want to attack that stigma. So
will you have some pretty rad merchandise for that one when that comes out? Because I
I,
wanna buy a shirt. I wanna buy a Disability Gorilla shirt.
sure, yeah, like we'll definitely have shirts. Maybe we'll make bandanas or something. I don't
Ooh,
know. Like
alright,
I'll have
alright.
to think about that. But
Okay,
any
well,
suggestions would definitely be appreciated.
alright. Well, listeners, if you have ideas for merch, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll get some Disability Gorillas swag going on. It's gonna be pretty
You
cool.
should, Eric, if you are coming over to the west side, you should come over for the wheel run that Grand Valley hosts.
That's
Yeah,
coming up very soon.
it's it's
Catherine, topical here.
April 14th, is that right? Or April 13th. It's a Saturday.
Okay. GVSU, it's the Grand Valley State University wheel run that they do in conjunction. Now I gotta make sure I get my details right here,
Like
With
with
wheelbarrow or like
no, no, no.
with
group.
Renew
Renew
Mobility,
Mobility.
so basically there are people who run it, people who walk it, and they have people in either arm bikes or I'm blanking on the name of the group that comes a lot
Like a
of
TerraTrike?
times. No, My Team Triumph, I believe, comes
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
quite a bit.
Yep.
But it's a really cool event that people who are able-bodied people and people with disabilities can do together. So I feel like it kind of meshes with your mission really well.
Uh,
It does.
So like a lot of how many people show up to that? Like,
That's a good question. I don't know where their
It
numbers are at right now.
was it's a pretty cool event. It is. I'm trying to think because the PT students in Grand Valley help participate in kind of running it and things like that. It's as a
Mhm.
service event, and I don't have direct numbers, but I know from watching the videos and stuff, it's a pretty good
Yeah.
turnout because, like Catherine said, you get runners, you get some people who are like super competitive. It's a 5K, so they're like, all right, I'm gonna do my 5K. But you get people who are out there walking it, people in their whatever device they use to get around, everything from little kids doing it to adults to anyone in
We
between. And it's a
it's
really
very
cool
cool.
event. I dropped a link in the chat there for the upcoming event.
I
Um,
was the race director when I was a PT student, and I believe
oh, were you?
we had about 200 participants when I was my year, and that was in 2017, and I think it's grown since then. So yeah, it's a pretty good.
Are you gonna run into Catherine this year?
I don't know if I will run. I'm definitely gonna bring my dog Ruby, 'cause she's in training to be a
Nice.
therapy dog. So I feel like that'll be a good setting for her to practice her skills.
Nice. Nice. So
no,
very cool. Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Catherine. What were you gonna say, Eric?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, in terms of like training for to be a therapy dog, what does that entail?
So
Like,
and I think it kind of depends. The organization that we're working with is West Michigan Therapy Dogs. So you have to pass a pre-screen and then take an 8-week course and then do a lot of shadowing hours with other like person dog teams. And then that organization has relationships with hospitals and nursing homes and schools and stuff in the area. So then you can go in to facilities where they have that relationship. But there's other organizations I know too, and I think the process varies a little bit.
well, how old are the dogs that they admit? Because like most of the puppy dogs that I know are pretty wild.
Uh,
If
I
right?
think there's no, at least with the organization that we're working with, they don't have like a strict age cutoff or anything, but you do have to pass the pre-screen, which is a lot of like knowing your basic commands and being able to be calm and kind of busy environment. So yeah, that would definitely disqualify some dogs.
And Ruby's a pretty
Yeah,
good
she
dog.
does pretty well for herself
Yeah.
for the most part.
That's awesome. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. This is really, really cool.
Yeah. No problem. I wish I was more talkative, but like
This
Yeah,
is
I really
fantastic.
enjoyed talking
This
with
is
you.
fantastic. So your website, ericgalvezdpt.com,
yes, yes.
and we'll put
Yep.
a link up to that, and also with links to his books, Reversal and Awakenings.
Yeah, I think I'm more active on social media than I am on the blog.
Okay.
So I don't think that's been updated in a
Okay.
while, but
Okay.
cool.
And your social medias are
It's Eric Galvez on YouTube,
okay.
Eric Anthony Galvez on Facebook,
Okay.
and Twitter. I think I'm Mass Kicker One. Uh,
we will find and link to all of those things in the show notes so that you can find Dr. Galvez and see all the cool, awesome things that he's doing these days. Look out for Disability Gorillas
yep.
coming soon to I don't know. I was going to say a theater near you, but that's not appropriate.
YouTube,
Coming soon near you. We'll just leave it there.
YouTube near you.
Yeah, there you go. Waves is a production of APTA Michigan. It is co-hosted by Dr. Catherine Klein and me, Andy Wicks. Eric Galvez is the author of multiple books, a former nonprofit leader and physical therapist, and a brain cancer thriver. Links to his social media accounts and books can be found in the show notes. Waves can be found online at aptami.org or on social media at aptamiwaves. If you are so inclined, we would greatly appreciate a rate and review on your podcaster of choice. It truly helps those magical algorithms put our podcast in front of more people. Thank you for listening, and may your documentation always be done on time.